And I want to get going because we have a pretty extensive agenda. We may not get through it, and if not, we will put a couple things off until the next meeting. Oops. So welcome. We have a much heavier crowd than we normally have at this meeting. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate your interest, and we will allow any audience participation that you feel is necessary, so just let us know.
Here's a Holly copy.
A Holly copy, where's Holly?
She's gone.
She gonna,
No,
oh, okay. And we still don't have Ruben. Oh, there he is, right, as a matter of fact. Now, where do you want us to put Ruben? We need another chair up here. So we will get going. This is the regular meeting of the Ruben, how are you? Good to see you. Regular meeting of the Belvidere Tiburon Joint Disaster Advisory Council, January 28th. What is it? It's not 2024, the 20 August. Hang on. It is the 28th, I guess, of January 25. That was a misprint. Okay. We will consider any additions, changes or anything that people have from the agenda of last meeting that have been posted. Anybody have any changes or anything they would like to add? Seeing none, we will proceed with the open forum. This is the opportunity for anyone in the audience who has a topic of interest they would like us to discuss. Please feel free to let us know that. If it is on the agenda, we'll deal with it at that point in time. If it is not on the agenda, unless it is somewhat of an emergency, we will agendize it for a subsequent meeting. Anything from the open forum? Yes. Okay.
A couple minor things I'd just like to ask, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I have vent holes in the frame around my attic in my house. And,
First of all, can you give us your name?
my name is Stanford Goldine. I live at 337 Blackfield Drive.
Good, thank you.
So I've got these vent holes that are up around my attic, and I've been reading about embers getting into attics and starting fires. And I found this kind of a little vent screen that you can plug into the hole, and theoretically it's supposed to cut down the access of embers. I have now discovered that there's a second kind of a screen people could buy that has a honeycomb inside the vent cover. And if it gets really hot, the honeycomb melts and closes up the vent 100%. This vent costs $1.50. The vent with the honeycomb costs around $8, $9, $10, $12, depending on where you buy it. I've got 30 or 40 of these holes, and other people that have homes have the same issue. I wonder what the experts think about this kind of a lesser expensive vent cover. And secondarily, does this cut down the amount of air going into the attic throughout the season? And is it problematic just putting these things in place in the first place? So I'd like to discuss this kind of event. I will also add that prior to this kind of event, I took bug screen and I just stapled bug screen over my vent holes. Is that an option?
But that keeps the rats out. So that keeps the rats out. So that's important. Anyway, the experts are sitting over here on the dais. Rich, do you quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but do you have any comments?
Yeah, there's whatever option you use, you just need to make sure that you maintain the ventilation, but there is a recommended distance of the grid that you have to use. So that we can refer you to the fire safe marine website, and it'll give you the exact size. That's the recommended, but it does restrict the airflow through the building.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I would also, you said you were on Blackfield Drive, sir?
Yeah.
So that's,
Submarine.
that's Southern Fire District, so you can always contact them and they can come out and do a full defensible space inspection for you. And give you recommendations on what you should do with your vegetation and screens and home hardening.
And I can work with you to get you the right information to schedule that.
Thanks.
Where did you find it?
Goodman's,
What's Goodman's? Okay.
2-inch diameter and 3-inch
Good.
diameter.
A lot of folks just, like you say, get the right proper screen.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the bug screen is the fastest and easiest thing to do.
Absolutely.
And these are hard to install, right?
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your suggestion. Appreciate that. And yes, let's try to get the word out on that. They've been around for quite a while and certainly can't hurt and probably will help if we have fire. Okay, any other comments from the audience? We will move ahead then with presentations. We have a couple of new members up on this dais that most of you probably know. Holly is not new, but she is representing Tiburon. Jane Cooper is the new mayor of Belvedere. She is in the audience. Thank you both for coming. And we certainly appreciate your interest in what's going on. The two new members are from Belvedere, recently appointed by the Belvedere City Council, are Ruben Chiara. Ruben is an anesthesiologist that I know something about, having done that for 40 years. So we welcome you aboard. I'm sure you're going to be very enthusiastic about what we're doing. The second one is Keith Pagan, who is sitting right next to me. Keith is an engineer. And to my knowledge, I think he's probably the first engineer we've ever had on this committee. So I think that will add a substantial amount of intellect and some good suggestions from you, we hope.
Look forward to
Is that true?
it. It is true.
Good. Yes, Holly, go ahead.
I just want to say one thing about each of these new members to our board. I'm very excited. Ruben has served admirably on our diversity inclusion task force, has done a lot of work in the community. Keith has also done a lot of work, and I have the pleasure of knowing him through our children. And I think both of these individuals are going to be a huge asset to this board. I want to thank them for coming and joining us. And I just want to welcome you to the board.
Thanks, Holly. You also know that we have two members that are not brand new to this meeting, but we have Mr. Brolin. He used to live in Belvedere, now lives in Tiburon. He is a retired fire chief, is a retired paramedic. So his skills will be welcomed on this committee. And of course, let's see, Colin Crawford, who has been here also for a couple of meetings. Thank you very much for, so I think all of you and Jamie, everybody knows you anyway. So I think this will add substantially to this dais and the expertise that this has. And I think we're going to take advantage of that over the next few months and hopefully get some things done around here. I think we are well prepared in this community, but there's always room for additional things. And we will be looking at some of those things and hopefully getting those off the ground with the intent and interest of this group. So thank you all for being a part of this.
Can I just?
Yeah,
I
Jake, go
just
ahead.
wanted to ask, Lori, could you send us after this meeting, could you send us a revised roster of all the people, of all the members, so that we have the ability to get in touch with each other, because we have new people and they don't, I mean, they wouldn't have my information, et cetera, so.
Not a problem.
Okay, any other comments about the new members? Only favorable comments, please.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll go ahead with the second item presentation. This is a tsunami warning. Tsunamis, fortunately, are something we do not experience here very frequently, although we did have one about a month ago, much to everyone's surprise, and created a lot of concern and a lot of thought. And so we have asked Steve Torrance, you're going to talk with Steve Torrance. I have known Steve now. You've been with the county 2 years? He heads the Office of Emergency Medicine for the county. He also staffs the so-called DC3 Disaster Citizen Corps Council, which is the Marin Disaster Council. And we meet, every 3 months, I guess, don't we? Led pretty much by Steve. So I appreciate your presence, and what can you tell us about the tsunami that hopefully won't happen again for a while?
Yes, good afternoon, Council. Stephen Torrance, Director of Emergency Management for the County of Marin. Just before we get into the presentation, I want to say thank you for having our office, as we have definitely seen some unique challenges of when it comes to wildfire responses, tsunamis, power failures, things of that nature. And so today, we want to highlight one of these unique things that have happened where it's not necessarily something that's always on the radar, but definitely has the opportunity to not only be impactful to the county of Marin, but just along the coast throughout the entire state of California, Oregon, and Washington. And so I have a very short presentation just to kind of highlight some of the actions taken, but also we'll be able to take some questions of the council at the end of at the conclusion of this. Before I get into the formal presentation, apologies if someone has seen this. We did give this, as Dr. Comro mentioned, at our DC3. So, we've given this presentation before just to highlight, but for this body, I'd like to kind of highlight just a little bit of the work that we do traditionally behind the scenes, but in collaboration with the city of Belvedere, the town of Tiburon, and also the fire district as well. And so our office oversees a number of programs throughout the county. Number one, which I'll highlight most likely today, or for the most part today, is the Alert Marin program, which is the countywide alert and warning system. In addition to that, we oversee mass care in collaboration with the Health and Human Services, the Emergency Operations Center for the county, which also pulls in the support from not only stakeholders outside of the city and town, but also regional and state partners. In addition to that, we really look at doing a lot of mass planning and mitigation support with all the jurisdictions within Marin. And so just very high level, some context of what we do within our office. We are housed within the county fire department, but we serve every jurisdiction within the geographic boundaries of Marin County. And so to get into the tsunami warning, I've been jokingly calling it the FONAMI, just because it's one of those things where we can see some of the impacts, but also it's something that we really want to make sure that we highlight. And so next slide. Oh, thank you. So on December 5th, we got our first tsunami notification from based off of a earthquake that happened just outside of Humboldt. It was an offshore event. A lot of the terminology is near source tsunami occurred. And with that, the National Weather Service, in collaboration with the National Tsunami Warning Center, sent out a wireless emergency alert, which most people know generally as the Amber Alert style message, to every jurisdiction that was potentially impacted by the tsunami. And so with that, they turned into a situation where because of the location of the actual epicenter of the earthquake, the Tsunami Warning Center and the National Weather Service had very little time to react. And so with that, they opted for worst case scenario. And so what that turned into is a notification that went to every jurisdiction that could potentially be impacted by that. Reason being is because of the location of the actual epicenter of the earthquake, it potentially could have driven a 500-mile-an-hour wave, which many people think, we see TV and things of that nature. We imagine this giant, crest-style wave. In theory, that's not how it happens. And also, there's a limited number of data collections buoys in this area. And so based on the best data that they had to make the decision to send the notification out. And so that notification goes to any device that is IPAWS compliant, which is the ability for you to receive a notification on that device to turn on that wireless emergency alert. And the intent of that is really to wake you up in the middle of the night, just in case there is an incident where you might be in cell phone coverage, and that's the way that we're going to wake you up to tell you to evacuate. In addition, I'll cover the Alert Marin follow-up, and then also some of the activation procedures that we have within the office. And so really looking at the timeline for the National Weather Service notification. So the initial notification to the National Weather Service occurred at 10:44. And that 5 minutes after the earthquake was detected, that is when the National Tsunami Warning Center sent out their emergency alert, which not only hit Marin, but all the way down to Santa Cruz and up through the Oregon coast. With that, due to the speed, they used all the data possible. And with that, most phones within the county, but also along the coast, received their notifications somewhere between 10:50 and 10:55 with the action to act now. And so the warning notification from from the National Weather Service is mostly focused on acting, and that's where they send those notifications out. So internally, based off of the way that the National Tsunami Warning Center structure is, the Office of Emergency Management and all public safety agencies within the county of Marin receive that notification typically at the same time as the public. And so generally, our office received that notification at 10:51. And from there, our duty officer, which is a 24-hour staffed position, is tasked with not only coordinating with the state, but also coordinating with the jurisdictions within Marin to number one, confirm that this is real, but also go through the process of confirming what is the level that we need to be implementing as we have a set number of plans. In addition to that, confirming the location and timing. Generally, when these tsunamis occur, we want to be able to figure out what is the anticipated arrival time of the wave in our area. And so because Marin, the location of Marin in reference to San Francisco and other locations, we knew the time for arrival in San Francisco, but we wanted to make sure that we have a general understanding of when would it hit in Point Reyes or the Tomales Bay, as that time would be a little bit sooner. And so that's where our duty officer goes through that process. But also we go through and determine what our recommended actions are. And that would allow for us to understand, is this going to be a max volume wave or a minimum wave based off of those actions? With that, we have a corresponding tsunami playbook that is applicable to the entire county, where we go through and we can understand where we're going to have impacts throughout the county the most. Generally, we understand that it's, of course, along the coastline, but we also have these specific locations where we understand where the impacts are going to be the most. And so with that, we took all of the available data from the National Weather Service and implemented our max tsunami warning. Because of the lack of data that the National Weather Service and the timing of the actual tsunami, everyone recommended max phase because of the lack of information that we could confirm. A little bit hard to see on here, but this is just a very general and high level example of the max phases. We have state issued and federally confirmed maps that give us pretty much polygons for the entire county. And just due to the topography of Marin, most of the lines are pretty close to each other. And so if we went from level 1 to max, which is 4, there's really locations where that could be 1 street away, just because of the topography and how the land typically goes straight up in certain locations. In this picture, this is Stinson Beach. This is one of those locations where a phase 1 to a max phase are pretty much similar throughout the entire peninsula. And I'll go through and I'll show you a couple of locations. Here you can see phase 1, 2, and 3 are all generally in the same location, but max phase is all the way across the street. And so that's where we run into these lines where for us, it's easier to alert larger members of the public to make sure that people know where safety is. Our office, generally our office's stance is to just notify everyone in that max area to just get people out of that area, as there might be cascading impacts in the surrounding area. Specifically to Belvedere and Tiburon, there are a couple of locations where, just a couple of maps here where we will definitely make sure that the notifications get out along the main corridors getting in and out. We generally understand that people will be in those areas, either on the shore, walking along the bike trails. And so with that, it is easier for us to notify people by turning on the wireless emergency alert in the event that we had to send it first. But in this situation, the National Weather Service took the lead on that. Here's an additional notification layout for the tsunami inundation zone for Belvedere and Tiburon. And I believe there's one more map as well. And all of these are available on the county's website in a public facing form as well. And so for as far as our internal alert and internal actions, we primarily want to get information from the state as they have access to the data sets and the buoys. And so with that, our local duty officer reached out to our coordinator at Cal OES. We verified all of our information, and once that verification was compiled from the state and federal governments, between there's a lot of phone calls, making sure that everyone is sending out accurate information, also coordinating with San Francisco, Sonoma, Mendocino, to make sure that we are all sending out very similar messaging. For example, we don't want to talk about evacuations and one jurisdiction says go north and the other one says south. And so that's where that coordination comes into play. We sent out our countywide Alert Marin, and the reason that we did that is because the National Weather Service sent out a countywide wireless emergency alert. And so what we wanted to do was not only clarify the actual language that was sent out, but also drive people to a local Marin location to get information. So within that text message, for people that opted in, we had the location of the emergency.marincounty.org map, which helped people understand if they were truly in an inundation zone. As we understand that people who were maybe on Mount Tam received that National Weather Service alert to say to evacuate to high ground, and there's really no other high ground in our county. And so what we wanted to do was make sure that people knew where they were in relation to the tsunami inundation zone. With that, that message was sent out 11/19. And with that, we use our partners to actually make sure that we're sharing information. And so we set up a countywide call with over 100 partners from the cities, towns, and special districts, public safety agencies, school districts at 11:30 to make sure that everyone was being briefed on the information as we were getting it in real time. And so on that call, there were a lot of moments where we were talking and the moment where we saw, okay, this might not be real, we shared that information in real time so people knew what actions to take and then also when they could suspend those actions. We also had a regional call with all of our other county and state partners to also make sure that we were working with each other to understand who was doing what, but also making sure, as I mentioned, that we were not hindering any other operations throughout the county. So as I mentioned, the National Weather Service sent out that first notification. Our goal was to localize the information, but also make sure that people could get that message in English and Spanish. That is our baseline information, is to make sure that every alert that goes out in the county is done in English and Spanish, but also direct people to the emergency portal where they can get localized information specifically to Marin. Next slide, please. And so some of our external actions, as I mentioned, there were a lot of people that put their emergency plans into place. And so with that, we wanted to make sure that the school districts that were moving students, the fire districts, police departments, as they were implementing their local plans, that we could supplement information and also let them know all of the information that we had. We also worked with some of our healthcare partners, primarily our hospitals, to give them updates on where we were and also provide any anticipated impacts to the county so they could start their surge planning in the event that we did have an actual impact for the jurisdiction. Next slide, please. So some of the data and metrics, and I know this is one of the big things that we've been sharing within the county. We always talk about our population is approximately 264,000. But when we talked about this emergency alert, this was the largest emergency alert that has ever been issued by our office. And that is one of the successes, but also it's one of the challenges as we're utilizing data that we have never used before. So there are a number of people that got a call on their cell phone who have not been opted in, but we actually have access to emergency data for these very reasons, just in case this was a real emergency. And so we had over 1 million points of contact. If we looked at the baseline data, that's approximately 4 points of contact for every person in our county. But what that also allows for us to do is figure out if we have cell phones, if we have home lines, emails, work phones. Also, all of our corporate our companies and hotels, making sure that we can meet people where they are, whether they're in the county or not. But also if you don't work in the county in this situation and you just so happen to be, let's say in San Francisco, and you got that Alert Marin, and that's why we stress, please sign up for Alert Marin, just in case there's something that happens here and you didn't get the phone call on your home, you can get it on your cell phone. And so that's where we definitely stress people opting into the system, so we can get the notification to where you are, no matter where you are. For example, we actually had people who received the notification in Australia, which, which is great, because a lot of them were going, I did not know this was happening in the US, but they have their loved ones here, they have their family members here. And so there are those moments where, yes, they probably got woken up in the middle of the night regarding, with a phone call and a text message saying there was a potential tsunami. But in the event that they had their loved ones, we knew that we can get that message to them regardless of where they were. With that, most of our text message were delivered in 4 minutes, which allowed for people to take action, but also drive people to the emergency portal. Approximately the secondary devices, which are also emails, cell phones, landlines, it took about 7 minutes. We definitely are looking at ways to make sure that we can improve the speed of getting these emergency alerts out. Although we had over 1 million notifications sent out from Marin, we also recognize that all of the Bay Area counties were doing the exact same thing. And so we're working with them to figure out how can we collectively speed up the distribution of these notifications for the entire Bay Area. Additionally, the purpose of us driving those localized alerts and providing localized information, as I mentioned, we had the emergency.marincounty.gov website. As a result of that, just looking at a couple of hours, we had over 26,000 hits on that website, which allows for people to click that link and go and figure out where they are. So that is the importance of us maintaining that, not only for the county, but all of the agencies within Marin. To close out and provide some just general feedback, sometimes you just got to go on social media and meet people where they are. We wanted to put a video together to help highlight what we did within the course of those actions. And some of the metrics that came into play in this space, as the Marin County Fire, we have our social media page, and we typically get interactions with people that are following us. With this situation, we actually had 58% of the interactions with our posts explaining the tsunami were for people who did not follow us. And so we want to make sure that we bookend these types of events with information to drive people to not only the Ready Marin page, but local fire districts, local cities and towns, to make sure that they can get prepared, but also find that information to make sure that they are ready in the event this does happen again. So some of the closeout action items that we are still working on, and we're actually finalizing our after action report over the next couple of days. We want to make sure that there's better and localized messaging, being able to rapidly take the National Weather Service information and localize it for the residents of Marin, but also making sure that we can point people to additional information for them to make informed decisions. We also recognize that the public maps there's a technology forward stance in our office, but we also recognize that not everyone uses technology. And so we're looking at ways to figure out how to make the maps more user-friendly, how to make the maps more accessible. As those lines, as you saw with the Stinson Beach, sometimes they're a little bit hard to read. And so we want to make sure that we can clarify those. Although we have 72,000 people opted into Alert Marin, we want to continuously drive people to be able to get the text message, the phone calls, no matter where they are. This is not only something that we're doing within our office, but we're making sure that we can support all of the agencies as we try to drive this number significantly higher. And then as I mentioned, starting off, we want to continue to prepare people for non-traditional or untraditional emergencies. We can be impacted by tsunamis here. And so we want to make sure that we have the public education. We also want to make sure that we have the interactions between our public safety agencies to make sure that we're training on these types of scenarios. Although they are low likely, but they are high impact, we want to make sure that we are ready despite the challenges that we might see. And as I mentioned, that after action report will help us book in this to make sure that we have information available for our agencies, but also the members of the public. So it was definitely a unique event. In addition to that, there were some odd factors, like, all of the emergency management directors just so happened to be in Sacramento and people were rushing back. But our goal is to make sure that we have as many things built here in Marin. So it doesn't matter if we have agency heads not in town, we have a strong structure throughout the Office of Emergency Management, but in collaboration with the cities and towns to make sure that we can serve in the event that we need to at a moment's notice. And so with that, thank you very much for your time, and I'm open to take any questions.
Thanks, Steve. You know, as you say, was a very unusual event, which I think caused a lot of the problem. You know, if you have fires, floods, we're kind of used to that. We know they're small, they get bigger. You have some time to warn people and activate procedures. This one you don't. Earthquakes you don't. And so those are the two that are particularly worrisome. And tsunamis being so rare really added to that. This is not the kind of disaster that you want your population wandering down to the waterfront to watch it come in. And we had exactly that happening here in Belvedere Tiburon.
Really?
So we do have a fair amount of education to do. And then you would get into the situation of, okay, public safety versus public panic. And again, in fires and floods, you've got a fair amount of time to sort those things out, but in this situation, you don't. And it would seem that maybe it's better to err on the standpoint of public safety and not worry too much about panicking the public, because that can also always be rectified if necessary. Comments? I'm sure a lot of you have some questions and things. What are your thoughts?
Stephen, thanks. Really appreciate the presentation. Obviously, this was a great practice run. I mean, especially with everything going on in LA, it's nothing better than a disaster to get people excited about something that most people don't find exciting, like preventive healthcare. You know, we had a little discussion yesterday, and, you know, one of the things, you know, I'm coming at this just open eyes, open arms, and, you know, I'm not trying to be critical, but just one of the things that sort of came up was this idea of opt-in versus opt-out. You know, I just published in the ARCH, 37% of residents in Belvedere and Tiburon opt in, which may sound terrible, but then if you look at like stats across the country, San Mateo County is 10.86%, Santa Clara 8%, Sonoma 12%. Why not move for basically an opt-out system? And I mean, I know some other counties, I think we had a discussion yesterday, Parkland, I even think San Mateo moved over to that. I'm sure you guys have researched that. Just any thoughts on moving to that? Because I know you presented some statistics. A lot of people were aware of Alert Marin, but I know of a lot of folks that didn't get the message, was delayed. And, you know, I guess two parts of the question. One is opt out, and the other one is how do we ensure integrity that messages are getting to everybody?
Yeah, I'll focusing on the opt-out first. So legally, we cannot do opt-outs for cell phones. And so as people start moving away from traditional landlines, VoIP, the FCC actually has federal regulations that prohibit us from actually accessing cell phone data for an opt-out system. However, we do de facto have somewhat of an opt-out system, but we can only use it in times of extreme peril. And so in this situation, our office, we actually do what a lot of private sector companies do, where we go out and buy data. And so what we've gone out and done, and to be able to get to that 1 million points of contact, we've actually go out and get data from PG&E, our public utility companies, and then also we purchase third-party data from some of our vendors to help go through and bookend the amount of the missing data pieces that we have. And so that allows for us to also get data points for short-term rentals, hotels, businesses, and things of that nature. So we like to say that we are very close to an opt-out, but we only use it during significant events. But for your traditional law and fire events that or more just sending out public notifications, that's where we actually are prohibited by FCC guidance for us opting people out, doing an opt-out process. But with that, we are striving to make sure that people can continue to opt in despite us having access to this data. However, we do understand that cell phones are going to be the big challenge for us in this space by getting more information from our telecommunication companies.
Steve, what's legal rationale about opt-in versus opt-out? That seems nonsensical.
It's linked to privacy. So cell phones are not viewed the same way as landlines at the FCC level. They actually they are not in the same utility bucket. And so because it is not seen as something by the FCC as I believe it's because it's seen as a different telecommunications bucket, they do not, they prohibit government agencies from having access to that data.
Well, I don't, this sounds like a stupid statement, but some way or other, we have to correct that because we're going the wrong way. You know, most people are starting to use cell phones and not using landlines and making it more difficult to use landlines. And yet we're saying we're sticking to this legal precedence, which is nuts.
The other angle is also the IPOS system, that is actually the system that governs pushing out the wireless emergency alerts, is actually it's being improved to the point where we can send out very hyper local notifications regardless. And so you'll be able to see people receiving those Amber Alert style, wireless emergency alert style messages. We are not at the point within the United States where we can send out hyper local and it be truly effective, because it's still dependent on cell phone towers. But once we get there, we believe it's probably about a year out, we will be able to send out hyper local, and I'm talking like a polygon that's just like one block. We will likely be able to send out those notifications to overcome people who have not opted in their cell phone. That system is owned and managed by the federal government, and so that's almost the back door for us to not have to worry about opt-ins for cell phones. And I believe you had a second question that I did not address. I apologize.
Yeah, the second question was just related to the timeliness of the messages. Alerts are critical. I heard through the background was, I think, just the vendor Everbridge. And I guess the question is, what are we doing for the next one just to ensure there's integrity of the alerts? And if you have any statistics to share, because I think the first one was from the WEA. You mentioned most residents got that. Do we have a percentage in terms of what metric we hit and what we're looking for the next time? Because obviously I think everyone would love 100% like within a few minutes.
Yeah. So there are a couple actions that we took and then some actions that we did not take. I'll start with, we have the ability to send out the wireless emergency alert, but because the way that the IPOS system is set up, the first notification that went out from the National Weather Service, they typically are broadcast for more than between 2 and 4 hours. And so in the event that we send out a separate wireless emergency alert with that same message, it would have stepped on the initial one and it would have broken the National Weather Service's alert. So with that, that's not best practice for us to do that. And so that's why we opted into the second method of sending out the calls. We've had a lot of conversations with not only our vendors, but also our jurisdictions around us who also use the same vendor. And we've recognized that there are some limitations in the amount of data that was being sent out at one time between all of the Bay Area counties. We actually are in a place where we are likely moving to a new vendor before the end of March, before the beginning of March, excuse me. We're just finalizing our contract. And so that way we'll have more of a decentralized structure within the Bay Area where we have, Marin will have a different vendor than the larger counties such as San Francisco and Santa Clara, where we won't have the same vendor being throttled. And so we are definitely looking at that to improve it. And I believe that we'll have some successful results in the next couple of weeks. Yeah.
I did have something. Yeah. Okay, great. So first of all, I want to thank you so much, Mr. Torrance, for the report today and also for all of your work on behalf of Marin OEM. I see you out in the community and you're doing a great job. So thank you. A couple of thoughts I had when you were presenting. I was thinking perhaps we could ask, with your permission, our town clerk to put this on our website. Through Lori, I would ask if we could put this brochure on the town website, if it's not already there. Great. Great. I think that would be a good first step. You talked about getting better localized maps, and then that brought up an idea in my head. I'm wondering if you partnered with each of Marin's 11 cities and towns, whether they might have a map that you could directly link to, so you don't have to do the work all over again. I think that the tsunami warnings and the fact that you were able to get the message quickly out to over 1 million people shows a lot. It shows that the system is working. And I want to commend you on that. And I know on top of our minds right now is the fires in Los Angeles. So this gives me some confidence that we will get alerted if we need to. And I know that's the next talk we're going to have with our chief, so I won't go there yet. But I just want to thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'm actually from Los Angeles, and so knowing a little bit about the challenges with the alert and warning system, it is a big conversation. But there's also a lot of things that we can do to make sure that we're not only testing our system, which last March 2024, we did our first countywide test. And this is why we really want to make sure that we're going out, we're getting that data so we can see how fast the notifications go out, just to provide a juxtaposition to this alert that went out. When we did the countywide test in March 2020, 2024. When we did that countywide test, we sent a notification out to over 140,000 people that were opted into the system countywide. 140,000 points of contact. And with that, we got every single phone call, text message, and email out in 8 minutes. And so with that, we recognize that when we hit that million, of course, there was a little bit of a delay. But it just shows the importance of making sure that we're sending out that notification, but also doing that test. And so we're going to be doing the routine tests so we can continue to validate the timeliness of our alerts, the effectiveness, but also on the back end, what is the public perception when they receive that alert? Do they take action? Do they click the link? And really trying to find a way to do some process improvement with emergency alerts to also make sure that the timeliness is taken into consideration.
Steve, I would agree that the system is working. The problem is if our major alerting system is only opted in by about a third of our population, we've got a major problem. And that's a little better than last year, but not much better.
Yeah, and in the event that we're doing, if we are working with Tiburon Fire District and there is a major incident, we need an evacuation for a localized area, our first course of action is send out that wireless emergency alert. That wireless emergency alert can be sent out very quick. Our office has a minimum standard that any alert that is requested of a Marin County agency has to be sent out in 10 minutes. And that is from the moment that it is verified by our staff. And we have a 24-hour duty officer to make sure that in the event that we get that call from the battalion chief that says we need to do an evacuation, our 24-hour duty officer has a phone, has a laptop, and has access to the internet to be able to send out that notification regardless of if it's 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. And that way we make sure that we can get that information to the public, but we can wake them up if we need to.
And you started off by saying this call came in and then you verified it before you sent it out, which is reasonable. How do you actually verify it in this day and age when there's so much misinformation on the internet?
Yeah, and misinformation, disinformation is something that we are grappling with. Spam emails happen all the time. Spam calls happen all the time. And so we have that point of contact with the National Weather Service and the Cal OES where we know exactly who to call and we can confirm, is this information correct? And also making sure that we can go through and send out an accurate alert. So there are a lot of phone calls with our duty officers, from our duty officer to the State Warning Center, where they have that 22 centers that are both 24-hour. That's how we verify it. If we're talking about local incidents, we're having phone calls with the battalion chiefs, the local police agencies to get verified information. So we're not sending out misinformation to the public.
One last question. This occurred at 10 in the morning on a weekday. What if it had been midnight on a Sunday? Would the operation still have worked as it did, or would it have been delayed even more?
I am fairly confident that it would have worked the exact same way. The State Warning Center, as I mentioned, where we get our verification, they are 24 hours. Our duty officer is 24 hours. We would have made sure that every single point of contact would have been the same. Ultimately, I think it would have been a little bit faster because, when we start, everyone was on duty, everyone was in our office, and so everyone was calling. I think we actually would have gotten out the notification faster in the event that we had less calls coming in directly to our team.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? We could sit here all day, but we don't have all day. So we'll move on. Steve, thanks very much. It was very informative. Appreciated. Okay. All right, we will move on to, we'll go from tsunamis to fires and other stuff. Our siren system upgrade. As you all know, we've had a siren system in Belvedere Tiburon for a number of years. Yes,
Presentation she was gonna discuss.
I know.
The fires in Southern California.
oh, you want to talk about that?
If you like, it was on the agenda.
Well, let's
so I'm
talk
happy
about
to-
it together, yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, well,
So-
proceed, yeah.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate Director Torrance and his team for doing some really remarkable things with the OEM, and they've really raised the bar over the last several years. So congratulations to him. Just want to talk a little bit about some of the questions that we had recently on the fires in Southern California and what actions we've taken and how we've done that. The first piece of it is that we're fully staffed here on the peninsula, while we and our partner agencies are taking a lot of efforts to support what's going on down in Southern California. We have still several strike teams down in that area. They've been down there for 3 weeks, quite exhausted, and I think they're looking forward to come home. The rain has cooperated substantially, and I think it has benefited the firefight, which is now more of a recovery and renewal time for them. Devastating, absolutely devastating, as you saw the photos about. But I just want to let you know that we are still up and operating and fully staffed. Some of the questions we had concerned the water system and how has that been managed through the years. And following the Loma Prieta earthquake in 1989 and the Oakland Hills fire in 1991, the communities in Marin County got together to develop a fire flow assessment. And in that assessment, they came up with multiple different recommendations on a fire flow improvement plan that's been managed by Marin Municipal Water District through a parcel tax that you see on your water bill or your tax bill every year. During that process, we've put in miles and miles and miles of upgraded main. I didn't know this, but Marin County has the oldest water system in the state of California. And you look at that and it was basically to deliver water to the mill back in Mill Valley. And now it's been built upon through the years to develop that. But since the issuance of the Fire Flow Improvement Plan and its partner agency, the Fire Flow Plan renewed back in 2012, we've upgraded wood tanks to stainless steel tanks. We've upgraded capacity. We've upgraded all of the mains coming into Tiburon, Belvedere. We have a new project on the backside of Paradise going in right now. We're adding additional hydrants. We visit those hydrants twice a year as part of our maintenance and servicing pieces of it. So just know that we are continuing looking at these issues that many of the people saw in Southern California. It is a gravity-fed system, so the pumps need to be push the water up to the larger tanks up on the hill. So your gravity feed comes down. They typically do that at night when there's less demand, and they can fill up those tanks. So when you get up in the morning and take your shower, you got plenty of pressure, plenty of water, and those things are all designed to do very well. So I think with the operational readiness of our system, the maintenance of our system, and the cooperation of MMWD, we've been doing sort of great work through the years to maintain the effectiveness of that water delivery system. The next piece of it is that we often got questioned about was, how do I prepare for something like this? And quite frankly, it's difficult to mention, but something like that could happen here. You have an 80-mile-an-hour wind with the perfect conditions, a long extended period of dry fuels and et cetera, et cetera. Could that happen here? Yes. Infrequently, our weather conditions would support that type of a thing. That's why we want to make sure that people have a ready to go bag, a ready bag. They have food, water, services for their pets. They have medications. They have everything they need to get up and leave for at least 72 hours. That being said, sometimes the best thing you can do is, depending on the emergency providers at the scene, is shelter in place. Not every time you hear an alarm do you have to get up and pick up and move out of town. And that brings me to our next piece of it, and that is evacuation of the peninsula. A lot of people have questions about the evacuation of the peninsula. How are we going to get everyone off? It's not ideal to get everyone off. We need certain areas that are cordoned for that service. Sorry, talking too fast. One thing that I would recommend is that we work in concert with our police chiefs, which we have, on how we can manage that evacuation piece. Sometimes we look at areas like temporary refuge areas like Shoreline Park, McKegney Green, Black East Pasture, depending on the event. just to get certain areas, people out of certain areas that are in harm's way. So those are what we look at. Paradise Park is another one for the backside of Paradise Drive. So those are the areas that the incident commanders are going to make that decision, send that message up to the OEM and say, get this message out. We want people to go to Paradise Park. The next piece is just, it's a reiteration of what our challenges are. You know, it takes a tsunami, it takes a fire, it takes an earthquake for people to get re-engaged. I mean, I don't know how many times I've sat at this meeting and it's just me and the board. And it's just, I think it's really great that people are here. You're getting engaged. We got the messages out, but it's really important. Oh, thank you. It's really important that we get the message out. And our message is basically home hardening, defensible space, working with the town, the city, the fire district on our Chipper Day events, which are huge. Since we implemented that, we've taken more than 2 million pounds of vegetation off of the peninsula. These are all dead, ugly fuels that have been littering our wide area. We're working with town open space. We're working with county open space and parks to clean up those parcels. Town's done a fabulous job with that Gilmartin project. Got to applaud you on that as well. So we've done a lot of work. Next week, we have a meeting with county open space and parks to how we're going to manage the new Martha project moving forward, how we're going to manage that to make sure, number one, it's safe, and number two, it doesn't become a hazard over the years. So that being said, I'll scoot into the siren piece, if you will. It's important to have a notification system that is not reliant on technology. And that was the presence of this board or the request of this board in years past. We put up a program that was one of the oldest sirens that you could rely on. And unfortunately, through the years, that process has changed with SMS and the various technology to activate it. So we found that we have to update that system so it mirrors that we can activate it locally, but we can also activate it through the new Mira system. So these are the things that we're working on. I received a quote, I've ran it by the town and the city, and we're prepared to start that work shortly to integrate that into the Mira system. So we can basically identify which sirens need to go or all of them, the message that needs to get out. But to dovetail onto Director Torrance's piece, just getting people onto the Alert Marin piece is really our biggest outlet. I think getting that signed up, I know they've done a great job at all of our local events, but we need to get people hooked in and locked into the Alert Marin piece because that's where you get the biggest bang for your buck.
Rich, how long do you think this transition is going to take until, you know, when we do get to the point where we can use our existing siren system for messaging and that sort of thing?
I think we're looking at literally 4 to 6 weeks. He's waiting for the parts. Yeah, he's waiting for the parts now.
Good.
We have our vendor, we have the estimate, and it's a reasonable piece. So
good.
Reasonable upgrade.
I'd be very interested. How many people in this room have a go bag? And obviously this is a selected group. If we would ask this to the general population, that would be a meager number. So again, we have education to do and trying to persuade people to do some of these things. Holly?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I think we need to take public comment on both the items before we discuss too much amongst ourselves. Okay.
We are down to about 7 minutes and I
Okay.
hate to be
Is
the.
there a
the time
meeting
waster.
following this?
There is.
Oh.
And
Can I
so
make
we
a-
have to vacate because we changed our date.
Okay.
We're squeezed
sure.
in here. So I think we're gonna have to table everything else on the agenda until the next meeting.
Oh,
Can I
think
make one
that's
quick
fine.
comment, then we'll turn it over? Just one fast comment.
Absolutely.
I just want to thank Chief Pierce for all of his years of service. He's announced his retirement. He is in the Chiefs Hall of Fame. Most people don't know that. That's a heck of an accomplishment. So thank you for all you've done. Much appreciated.
Yeah, I want to echo those comments. So thank you.
I will also add to those comments, Rich. Rich and I have known each other, and I hate to admit this, for 50 years. When we started out as volunteers with the Tiburon Fire Department, he then went on, managed an ambulance company, came back, became a fireman again, became chief. And certainly from this group and from our entire community, we owe you a significant thank you
Thank
for your efforts and all of your interest over the years. We are very much in awe of how you've managed all this. Thanks,
Thank you.
Rich.
It's been my honor.
Public comment. Anybody? Yeah, Jane?
I just had a question. I don't know exactly what it is that you're doing with the sirens. But it sounded like it was very Tiburon centric, and being the mayor of Belvedere, I'm curious, how did this siren thing involve, or does it involve Belvedere?
It definitely involves it because Belvedere was one of the champions of the program when we first started it. So we wanted to cover both sides of the island. It's difficult because you're exposed over to the Sausalito side. So what we were doing is we had to move one. Southern Marin put in a different type of siren at Bel Air called an LRAD. It's not really designed for the hilly side, but it's perfect for Bel Air. But what we wanted to do was move the one that was at Bel Air over to the Richardson Bay Sanitary District so we can get that other side. And we're working with Southern Marin with regard to their sirens in the Sausalito area. How much are we going to be coordinating with that piece of it too? Because you can individually light these sirens up. So.
Yeah, and Jane, I can tell you that when we had a little tsunami 2 or 3 years ago, I was at the Sausalito fuel dock, and you could hear the whole thing going on the Sausalito side of Belvedere Island. So it was very impressive, even more impressive because we decided to keep going fishing. So we went out in the ocean and we went up and down some big waves.
Well, they're coming, yes.
Sorry, I'm gonna hit you with a technical question, but has anyone done the math on basically water capacity? I mean, we all heard about losing pressure down in LA. Like how many fireheads have to be going full, or, can you be using? And because then a lot of the houses had plastic piping, so then all of a sudden there's just free flowing water.
Right.
Has anyone done the math, like how fast will our tanks be drained? Because they can't be pumped up at the same rate.
No, it depends on what tank is being drained. So if it's a Sugarloaf tank, it's a much smaller tank. If it's a Mount Tiburon tank, you got 2 side-by-side multi-million gallon tanks. So it depends on, our water system is based on different heights on the peninsula. So it depends on where you are. With regard to the open butts that you were talking about, that's a big consideration, but you don't want to get to that. And you don't want, every time here's your reservoir, a bag, right? And every time you poke a hole in it, it just sort of goes a little bit faster and faster. So I think you need to be aware of that.
Well, I'm just wondering, we probably should do the math, some scenarios, and identify if a tank needs to be bigger.
I think we've upgraded the tank systems on the peninsula and throughout the county. We've replaced wooden tanks, even here on the peninsula. Yeah. So I think we've made a lot of steps and efforts. I think when I started, we had very little water flow on the island of Belvedere. So I think that we've brought in some new lines. We got great flow up there now, so we're able to support that. And it's also helped our residential fire sprinkler systems as well. Sorry about that. I talked.
Well, some people have the idea that since we have, I don't know, ocean breezes or something here in Southern Marin, that really does not create a fire hazard, except I would remind you that about 5 or 6 years ago, half of Angel Island burned in about 12 hours.
Yeah.
And about 15 years ago, we had the Oakland the Oakland fire, which was at that time, I think still is, the worst fire in the history of this country from the standpoint of total property loss. So we are subject to those sorts of things.
Until last month.
Yeah.
Leah Curtis from Southern Marin Fire District, Preparedness and Education Coordinator. I know we've got about 45 seconds left, so I wanted to give a quick update. Regarding the LRAD, we do have a map on our website, smfd.org. I can send you the information of where we know that siren hits. It's important to get that feedback monthly from the community, so we know where we need more sirens or where we can tweak that to get better coverage as well, and not overlap with the rest of Tiburon as well. And then for those of you in the Southern Marin Fire District parts of Belvedere Tiburon, you will be getting a mailer with reminders, and this is in response to the LA fires, reminders of mitigation efforts that residents can take, free services regarding chippers, home assessments we talked about earlier, where to do that, volunteering opportunities as well. So please, they're free services. We do them every day. We want to come and do your house. It's an hour assessment, one-on-one with one of our inspectors. I know Tiburon does the same as well. So we want to make sure everybody gets those eventually. With that, you'll have that mailer should be hitting this week. And then we are updating an evacuation resource mailer. So it's a preparatory, it's not a how you should evacuate, it's how you can evacuate. It's the way I like to think of it, because the situation can always change. So that educational mailer will be coming out soon as well.
Leah, thank you. Appreciate your comments. All right.
So our action item on the agenda that we're gonna readdress in April, just to let you know, because it kind of goes. It goes with what Stephen Torrance was talking about 8 years ago. We all voted to support the tsunami warning signs that were brought to us by the National Weather Service. They gave us a recommendation of locations where to put them. I'm gonna ask us to vote again, take it back to our city and town councils again. So be prepared in April. I'll be sending you some more information on this by email, and we'll vote on this because I think that we need to jump on the heels of this last tsunami scare and start working on our education and awareness piece here on the peninsula.
Well, I would recommend that we not wait till April. I think if we were to be able to get together in, early March, for instance, that, because it is important. And one of the things that we know about emergency preparedness is that it's rarely when everybody's ready for it that something bad happens. So, it just feels like it woulda, shoulda, coulda, don't want to do that.
For the people that are new to the disaster council, we all voted back in 8 years ago to support this. We took it to the city council and the town council, and they voted and approved it. And then there was some bad publicity and it kind of got shot down. So it has already been approved by councils, but I want to do it one more time. Go forward.
We got rolled.
Well, Lori, it wouldn't hurt us, I guess, to have an extra meeting at some point. We will not talk about Old Business Day, but I will assure everybody in the audience, there are many programs and things going on at both Belvedere and Tiburon that we will follow up on and institute a few new ones with some of the new members of the group. So I think we're doing a pretty good job protecting this community, but there are many other things that we need to get up and running. So with that, I guess they're going to kick us out. So thank you all for coming, and
I move we adjourn.
all right, thank you. All in favor? Colin?